This afternoon, we have Minister of Transportation Rick McIver to discuss the Financing Alberta Strategic Transportation Act. Minister McIver.
Good afternoon. This afternoon in the Legislature, I will introduce Bill 43, the Financing Alberta's Strategic Transportation Act, a bill to enable Alberta's government to pay for new or expanded highway infrastructure by collecting user fees, or tolls. Alberta's government has been clear we face a fiscal reckoning. We need to find creative ways to build new infrastructure projects that wouldn't otherwise get built, or ways to build new projects faster. Most other provinces, states, and countries have a long, successful history of financing major construction using user fees, including the Coquihalla in British Columbia, the Dacho Bridge in Northwest Territories, and the 407 Highway in Toronto. User-financed construction will strengthen economic growth and competitiveness at a time when Albertans need it most. This means faster commutes and less congestion while unleashing economic potential through speeding up commerce. The FAST Act is enabling legislation, meaning there could be other projects that are financed using user fees in the future. However, the FAST Act only enables user fees after certain criteria have been met. 1, the Act mandates that Albertans must be engaged before a project can be built using user fees. 2, the Act only allows user fees to finance new or expanded transportation infrastructure. It explicitly forbids fees on existing lanes and bridges. And 3, importantly, those Albertans who do not wish to pay user fees will still have a non-toll fee alternative. In other words, as an Albertan, if you never want to pay a toll in your life, you don't have to, period. Additionally, the FAST Act stipulates that revenue collected can only be used to cover the cost of new infrastructure or expansion to existing roads and bridges, meaning that revenue cannot go into general revenue. It will be dedicated to the cost of the user fee project. As well, similar to the user fee used to pay for the Coquihalla Highway in British Columbia, the fee will stop once the capital cost of the project is paid off. The legislation includes the ability for the minister to suspend the user fee during an emergency, such as during a forest fire in the summer of 2019, and provide exemptions for certain vehicles, such as emergency services and highway maintenance contractors. The first project proposed to proceed under this legislation will be a new bridge on Highway 697 over the Peace River to replace the aging Lacrete Ferry at Tompkins Landing. Alberta's government had planned to replace the ferry with another ferry. However, local residents strongly advocated the construction of a bridge to replace the ferry, as they expressed the ferry is inconsistent and unreliable. No government, NDP or Conservative, identified a new bridge on the current or previous capital plans. The traffic counts simply do not support building a $200 million bridge over the Peace River with the traffic count on Highway 697. Some of you may recall that Mackenzie County and Lacrete Chamber of Commerce sent letters in July of this year asking Alberta's government to explore the option of user fees to finance the construction of a bridge. We accepted their invitation. We consulted with the county, the Chamber of Commerce, local business and industry leaders, and Indigenous communities in the region. We heard overwhelming support for the construction of a bridge using user fees, but Alberta does not currently enable the collection of user fees for transportation infrastructure, so we're introducing the FACT Act today to create that enabling legislation. This kind of collaborative work and creative thinking is what we need in Alberta as we continue on the path to economic recovery. The FAST Act is not limited to enabling the construction of the 697 bridge. We expect other communities, chambers of commerce, industry partners, or whomever will come forward in the future with other opportunities, and we want to be able to respond. I look forward to seeing this legislation through the legislature, as well as overseeing work on projects that will increase our transportation capacity and help drive our economic recovery. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. As a reminder, this briefing is embargoed until the legislation is introduced. We now have time for question and answer. Moderator, who's our first question?
Yes, the first question is from Dean Bennett with the Canadian Press. Go ahead, Dean.
Hi. Hi, Minister. Sorry, I guess I'll limit it to, we've got many technical questions here, but we didn't have a tech briefing, so I guess I'll limit it to one. So you always have a toll-free alternative here. So how is that going to work in the La Crete Ferry? Because it's not consistent. It's not working for them. You build this new highway, so what happens to the ferry? If the ferry shuts down, then how do you get a toll-free alternative?
Well, there's already a toll-free alternative there, and that is the trip around. It's another hour and a half, 2 hours, which is what the community often uses. And to be clear, Dean, part of the reason why the community was so set and virtually demanded a bridge rather than the ferry that we offer to get them a new ferry is that the ferry's ability has been very spotty and inconsistent. So there's many times now where the ferry is not available and the only route is what will become the alternative route. The ferry doesn't run in the winter. It doesn't run when it's too foggy, when it's too rainy, when the water's too high. It doesn't run when the water's too low. And even when it is running, people there say if you happen to catch it at the right time and get on right away, it's really nice. But if there's a lineup, sometimes it can take several ferry crossings to get on. So the same alternative that is there now will be there in the future. And this will be a new and expanded piece of infrastructure as identified. And people up there really want it.
And just to follow up, how exactly are you going to be you said Albertans have to be engaged before using the fees. What does that engagement look like?
Well, we've been up there. We've talked to them, made 2 trips up, and made a lot of stops. We were at Fort Vermilion. We talked to Indigenous communities up in the area, including the Paddle Prairie Métis settlement, which one side of the bridge will likely land on. We talked to the business leaders and community, the Chamber of Commerce in La Crete. We spent considerable time over the last few months talking to people that would be users of the ferry or the bridge, and received an overwhelmingly strong signal that the vast majority of people there really want the bridge.
Thank you. We have our next question from Stephen from Global News.
Yes, from Fletcher Kent. Go ahead, Fletcher.
Hi, Minister. Thanks for taking the call. Thanks for taking my question here. A quick question. You mentioned that this can't be used the money can't be used on existing lanes when it comes to highway projects. How does that work with an expansion? Say if somebody wanted to expand the QE2, for example, could tolls then be charged on the QE2 or just for specific lanes, or how does that work?
Well, we would have to get into that, Fletcher. But let me say this much: if there's 2 lanes available right now to drive on without paying a toll, there would have to be at least 2 lanes after any expansion where you wouldn't have to pay a toll.
Okay, so then if there is any tolls on those sorts of lanes, then it would be limited to the new construction. No, it's not just all put together then.
Yeah, we don't know what other projects may be right for user fees in the future, but I stand by what I just said. If there's 2 lanes on a particular highway that you could drive today without paying a toll, there will always be 2 lanes on that particular highway you can drive without paying a toll.
Okay, what kind of demand is there for these sorts of projects right now?
Well, I don't really know. See, this is something that even though we, in our party platform, we talked about the opportunity for alternative financing, this particular project kind of came to us. As I tried to explain in my remarks, I went up to La Crete, an area, to say, great news, we're going to replace your ferry in a couple of years. And they said, no, you're not. We want a bridge. And so we looked at it. We said, with the traffic counts there and a $200 million bridge, it's not, well, respectfully, we said it's not happening. And they said, well, how much is it going to cost us to use it if we get a bridge? So this project, interestingly enough, kind of came to us. So we have no other projects in the hopper, if you will, but we know that that's a possibility in the future.
Moderator, can we put through the next question?
Yes, our next question is Michelle Bellefontaine with the CBC. Go ahead, Michelle.
Hi, Minister. Thanks for taking my question. I just had two questions. One question and then a follow-up. So in Crete, is there enough of a population up there to finance a bridge? The tolls?
I guess I don't have the population off the top of my head. It is a hamlet, but let me say this: we have traffic count numbers, including approximately how many cars and how many trucks go across today. And we talk to the people that use the bridge, the businesses, the industries, and talk to them about how much it would cost based on their traffic counts, and that it would probably take at least 30 years at that rate to pay for it. And they said, get it done. So I guess from not so much the population, but rather the people that actually use the bridge today overwhelmingly said we want, or use the ferry today, said overwhelmingly said we want a bridge, and we will pay a fee to use it rather than the unreliable ferry system, relatively speaking, or the hour and a half, 2 hour trip around the other way.
Do you have a follow-up, Michelle?
And my follow-up is, how do you anticipate collecting the fees? Would people have, I know in other jurisdictions you have, cards, like flash cards or whatever, or, how does the government see this working out?
Well, see, Michelle, I think that's a great question, and we asked ourselves that, and here's the great news. Alberta is not first out of the gate to have user fees. In fact, we're probably late to the game. So there's many other jurisdictions that collect fees now using automatic, mechanical, technical ways of doing it, and we will look around and see it and pick a good, affordable technology that's working somewhere else and adopt it. We don't actually have to create anything that hasn't already been created here before. We'll pick from what's currently in place and working somewhere else.
Moderator, can we have our next question, please?
Our next question is Ashley Joanna with Post Media Edmonton. Go ahead, Ashley.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for taking my question. I just want to piggyback a bit off of what Michelle was asking. You say you have traffic count numbers and that it'll take 30 years to pay off the $200 million bridge. What is the math that you've done? How much will it cost? What is the toll that will be set on this new bridge? And what are those traffic count numbers?
Well, we'll get you the traffic count numbers, but what we told people there is based on the traffic count that it'll be. And to be clear, a toll hasn't been set because we haven't got the legal authority to set a toll. That's what this legislation is about. But we told people that if you're driving a truck, a commercial truck like an 18-wheeler or something, it'll probably cost them in the neighborhood of $150 per crossing, and a passenger vehicle probably $5 or $10 per crossing. But to be clear, those fees have not yet been set, because we don't have the legal authority to set them.
Ashley, do you have a follow-up?
And then just as a follow-up, what sort of timeline are we working with here? You say people overwhelmingly want to not have to use the ferry anymore. So, when are you expecting to actually get the construction started? Do you think you've done enough consultation that it'll satisfy the requirements in the legislation? Is this good to go now? Or what timeline are we talking about?
Well, we do. And one of the reasons is we've done, I think, a great deal of consultation. And the other thing is the overwhelming level of support. In some meetings, we couldn't find anybody that didn't want the bridge alternative. And I'm certainly not saying there's not people that will disagree. There's always people that disagree, but I feel confident that the overwhelming majority are in favor.
We have our next question.
What's the timeline?
Well, I can't assume any legislation will ever pass the Legislative Assembly, but if it does, I think 2026, in that neighborhood, the bridge could be open. And again, once the legislation passes, and then we can actually are free to do spend some more money on engineering and such, because you can't really spend a lot on it now. We've done some thumbnail sketches with the professionals in our ministry, but to do detailed engineering, we didn't want to spend money on that till we had a legal mechanism to actually realize a project at the other end, and that's what this legislation is about.
Moderator, can we have our next question?
We're having another question from Dean Bennett with the Canadian Press. Go ahead, Dean.
Thanks. Minister, your party ran in the last election on, against the carbon tax, mainly because you shouldn't punish hardworking Albertans from driving their car, going to work, and yet here we are. This legislation now officially opens the door to toll roads in Alberta. Is that not kind of in conflict with sort of your core election promise not to punish Albertans for driving their cars and going to work?
On the contrary, Dean, this is intended to provide new opportunities. Whatever place, as I said, existing roads and places where people can drive now without paying a toll will still be available to them in the future. We've crafted the legislation to limit ourselves to that because that's our intention. But outside of government financed infrastructure, this at the appropriate cases may provide certainly one case with this bridge. In the future, it may provide other opportunities where people can expand their choices. I don't know that expanding people's choices is punishing them. I think, frankly, it's providing them an option that they don't have today. And since public consultation will be part of it, we need to make sure that those options are options that people look favorably upon.
But once this legislation is in place, would you agree? I mean, the door is now open to, you could amend this legislation and make existing roads toll roads. There's nothing stopping any future governments from doing that, is there?
Dean, what you just said has never been untrue for any government since Alberta was formed in 1905, and will never be untrue. Any government can make any legislation within their authority at any time to change something. So, while it's an interesting question you ask, it kind of would apply to anything you would make up as a possibility.
Moderator, we have our next question.
Next is Catherine Grotowski with Alberta Today. Go ahead, Catherine.
Thanks for taking my question, Minister. So these tolls are going towards the capital side of it. Will the general tax revenue pay for maintenance for these roads and bridges?
No. What it says in the legislation is, the legislation, I can't quote you from the legislation, but the intention is that I think what I said in my remarks is once the capital is paid off, that the toll would stop. So it's open to pay for the operations and maintenance until the capital's paid off. But only for that project, not for the wider transportation network, and the money can't go into general revenue at any time.
And another campaign commitment was the passage of the Alberta Infrastructure Act. So you're supposed to have this transparent list of prioritized criteria for infrastructure projects. How is this getting to pay to have your project built and kind of skip the queue? How does that fall in line with this new toll system?
Well, it's an interesting question you asked, but it's also about a question about legislation that hasn't been introduced or passed. So I would refer you that to when the legislation actually comes forward, and that might be a good time to ask that question again.
Thank you very much, everyone. That's all the time we have for today.
Thank you.